Just a few seconds before liftoff, SpaceX scrubbed its Falcon 9 rocket launch tonight. Liftoff was scheduled to take place at around 7:55 p.m. However, SpaceX posted on X that the launch was canceled due to upper-level winds. Officials say they are now planning to launch the rocket tomorrow. The window is open between 4:03 p.m. and 8:03 p.m. The mission will deliver 25 Starlink satellites into low Earth orbit. Following stage separation, the first stage will land on a drone ship in the Pacific.
Welcome to Redlinelive, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Joe Demers. Man, it's a crazy world out there. So many things been going on. Crazy week. Yeah. So whether it be about AI or advancements or quantum computing or military advancements, so many things are happening in this world, but we're going to get into them all today. Hopefully, some more updates for you in military aspects, some stuff about Trump's Golden Dome, believe it or not, and some more scientific stuff, including Japan wants to build a solar ring around the moon. Some crazy stuff, but we're going to talk about it all here next on Redlinelive. All right, just want to start this off by sharing my new website, redlineministry.com. You can go on there and check it out. Check out my new platform. See about my story, and ladies and gentlemen, look for my new book out there. It's been out since last August, and some cool things about political training. And just to show you what that is all about, I'm going to play you my platform video. Here we go.
If you're already in office, you know this truth. Winning an election is one thing, leading with conviction is another. If you're considering a run for local office, Congress, or the Senate, the question isn't if you're qualified, it's whether you're prepared to stand without compromise. We've been told for too long that faith belongs outside the conversation, but history proves the opposite. When God's principles are removed, leadership collapses. Redline for Candidates was written to equip candidates and leaders to bring clarity, courage, and biblical foundations back into the public square, not as noise, but as strategy. This isn't theory, it's a framework for speaking truth, drawing lines, and governing with moral authority in hostile environments. I'm inviting you to download the book, take advantage of all the content, and if you want, then you can join our 3-module training program, specifically designed for conservatives, Republicans, who don't just want to run, but want to win and lead with integrity. Inside this powerful book, Redline for Candidates, I'll show you how to integrate faith, messaging, and discipline so your campaign reflects conviction, not calculation.
Yeah, there it is. Redline for Candidates. If you want to check out about not compromising the Lord's standard in your path to campaigning, but standing on his standard alone as we go forward and fight against this world system, right? So that's what that training is all about. If you are interested in that type of thing, go ahead and give it a check out, and I'd be greatly appreciated. I think it'll help you a lot. All right. So last show we talked about MX scenes, right? And that's how they are able to trap certain things in layers of electromagnetic fields and flat surfaces, right? So check this out. I found this article too, just popped up just a couple days after I had reported on that. Scientists trap light in a layer 1,000 times thinner than hair. Researchers have created a nanoscale structure that traps infrared light in a layer just 40 nanometers thick, over 1,000 times thinner than a human hair. Now, this is going to come into play here in a minute because I'm going to show you um, something from the Argonne National Laboratory that they use their new X-ray scan on too, which is pretty interesting because I think there's a lot of when we talk about end time scenarios and in the Christian space here and about how that's going to be implemented when it comes into this 90% of stuff being built is going to be our stuff when they start to do their disclosure, right? This stuff is going to come in handy to know. So that's why we read these articles here. By using a unique material with exceptional light bending properties that they can confine and intensify light far beyond previous limits. This setup also dramatically boosts light conversation effects, turning infrared into visible blue light. The advance could pave the way for smaller, faster photonic technologies. Now, I was telling you, that's why this article here is interested me so much because the future is this Star Trek world that we're going to be moving into, right? And this is evidence of it right here. They're advancing these nanoscale technologies to come into play with futuristic technologies. Photonic, in particular, with lasers, right? We've seen it come out in the military just recently in the conflict over there in Iran. And I think, I told you about that China actually shot down one of our orbital satellites with their own technology in lasers up in our suborbital space. And we're going to see this start coming out more and more in different technologies with lasers. And that's where the photonic technologies will show themselves most likely in a variety of different ways. Obviously, weaponry is going to be one, but I think it's going to expand beyond that too. When I talked about that specific show, the Star Trek Starfleet Academy, when it talks about photonic organisms, I think that could be a reality in the near future with a closed environment, like that would be able to come to its fruition. Like if we were to have a giant spaceship, like you see on Star Trek, right? Where it's a closed environment and they can bring something with photonic technologies like that as a real life form. Go figure. Not real, but they make it look like it is, right? An artistic, here's a picture of it right here. An artistic view of the subway wavelength grating made of layered I can't even say that, molybdenum diselenide. I think the MX was a diselenide too, right? One of the other things we see, and now that we have the Artemis 2 rocket coming back, is supposed to have landed tonight. I guess it's been delayed from what I hear. But one of the materials that allows us to do the rocket missions that we're doing now, and we're going to get into um, Falcon 9, which is SpaceX's rocket that he just sent up. And I think the one from April 6th was delayed till today, and they're actually going to launch tonight, I think out of California, if I'm not mistaken, at 8 p.m. So they've created one of the things that allows them to do these reusable rockets and these engines is a material that you've heard from these scientists that have gone disappearing called Mondelloy. And they've been able to create this to handle intense heat. So that's one of the aspects of this as well. The red spheres represent molybdenum atoms, and the blue ones represent selenium atoms. Light is trapped within the grating, which enhances the generation of light at 3 times the original frequency. Researchers from the Faculty of Physics at the University of Warsaw, oh, this is in Russia, Go figure. Working with teams from the Lodz University of Technology, the Warsaw University of Technology, and the Polish Academy of Sciences have created a structure capable of trapping infrared light in a layer just 40 nanometers thick. Their approach relies on a design known as sub-wavelength grating made from specialized material called molybdenum diselenide. The findings were reported in the journal ACS Nano. Let's see. Light behaves both as a particle and as a wave, and this wave structure introduces a limitation. Each type of light has a wavelength, which determines how small a structure can be while still controlling it effectively. Visible light has wavelengths of several hundred nanometers, while infrared light extends to a micrometer or more. This raises an important question. Can light be confined in structures smaller than its own wavelength? The research team demonstrated that this is indeed possible. By engineering a sub-wavelength grating, they were able to trap infrared light within a layer only 40 nanometers thick. This structure consists of closely spaced parallel strips that interact with light similarly to a prism. When these strips are positioned closer together, the wavelength of light, the grating can act like a near perfect mirror while also holding the light inside a very small volume. While earlier versions of such gratings made from materials like silicon and gallium, remember I reported on gallium uh, just a couple weeks ago, compounds required thicknesses of several hundred nanometers to function effectively. Reducing their size caused them to lose their ability to confine light. The key difference in this new approach is the use of molybdenum diselenide, which has a much higher refractive index. In simple terms, light slows down more inside this material than in others. While light slows by about 1.5 times in glass and roughly 3.5 times in silicon or gallium arsenide, it slows by about 4.5 times and in MOSE squared. That must be what the material is. This strong slowing effect allows the structures to shrink dramatically while still trapping light efficiently, resulting in a layer more than 1,000 times thinner than a human hair, turning infrared light into blue light. This material also brings additional advantages like graphene. It forms layered structures, but unlike graphene, it is a semiconductor. Ooh, interesting. So it can transmit electricity as well. Interesting. It also exhibits nonlinear optical behavior, including a process known as third harmonic generation. In this process, three infrared photons combine into one photon with a higher frequency, effectively converting infrared light into visible blue light. Because the grating strongly concentrates infrared light, this conversion becomes much more efficient. The researchers found that the effect is more than 1,500 times stronger compared to a flat layer of the same material. Another major advance lies in how the material was produced. Previously, I hate when that does that. I lost my spot. Oh, there it is. Previously, thin layers of this material were created using exfoliation, a method similar to peeling layers off a crystal with adhesive tape. While simple, this technique is inconsistent and limited to very small areas, typically around 10 square micrometers, which is not suitable for real world devices. To overcome this, the team used molecular beam epitaxy. Interesting. A well established method for growing semiconductor layers. This approach allowed them to produce large, uniform MOSE squared films spanning several square inches. Despite this large size, the layer maintained a thickness of just 40 nanometers, giving it an extreme aspect ratio For comparison, the thickness to size ratio of this layer is about 1 to a million, while a typical A4 sheet of paper has a ratio closer to 1 divided 20. I don't even know how to read that. Radical. Whoa. These results suggest that molybdenum diselenide produced in this way could significantly change how light is controlled in future technologies. Structures no longer need to be thick to manipulate light effectively. Instead, extremely thin layers can perform the same function and, in some cases, even better. Because the production method is scalable, the path toward real world applications such as photonic integrated circuits is becoming increasingly realistic. So I think this is probably going to come into play not just uh, with lasers and stuff, but also in fabrics, smart fabrics. I think that's what I was reporting to you with the MX scenes, right? Very interesting, ladies and gentlemen. So the scientific research into this stuff is becoming exponentially greater, but it's because um, of certain machinery that we've now gained access to that allow us to look deeper into these things than we've ever been able to do before. So this is pretty crazy right here. Um, US lab unlocks secrets of superconductors that ensure no energy is lost during electricity flow. Um, Hold on real quick. All right. Superconductors allow electricity to flow without resistance, meaning no energy is lost as heat. So this is where I was talking about certain machinery is coming to play, which allow us to look beyond the nanometer scale in order to create these things with photonic technologies and trapping light, right? Check this out. Researchers in the United States have unlocked secrets of high temperature semiconductors. Researchers at the U.S. Department of Energy's Argonne National Laboratory. We're going to hear a lot about these guys because they're doing a lot of different stuff and using AI as a machine to bring different scenarios and uh, what do you call that? Hypotheses to how to create scientific discovery. It's going to get really interesting, ladies and gentlemen. Argonne National Laboratory have discovered how tiny changes in cyperhydride structure enables superconductivity at near room temperatures, but extreme pressure, offering clues for designing more practical superconductors. These experiments show what the upgraded APS can do. We can now study atomic level structures with unprecedented detail and materials under extreme pressure, said an Argonne physicist. Let's see. Researchers revealed that superconductors allow electricity to flow without resistance, meaning no energy is lost as heat. This property makes them useful for technologies such as MRI scanners, particle accelerators, magnetic levitation trains, and some power transmission systems. And I really think this is going to come into play with these small modular reactors for nuclear energy as they are implemented into our data centers, right? Using them for data centers. One of the articles that I didn't bring up today that I saw was that there's a 100-foot dome that they just put up in Idaho. It's a facility for researching this type of stuff for those small nuclear reactors so that we can bring them to a reality. So we already have a laboratory for that built over there in Idaho. Pretty insane. They also highlighted that most superconductors, however, only work at extremely low temperatures, often hundreds of degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. Keeping materials that cold requires complex and costly cooling systems. Yeah. Not only that, but we're talking about I told you guys that they build these data centers close to rivers and stuff because the amount of water they need for cooling them is ridiculous. And we're using our natural resource to that capacity to try and bring these advancements forward like AI, right? Which limits where the superconductors can be used. Now, researchers in the US have helped take a step toward easing that limitation. They have gained new insight into a class of materials called superhydrides that can become superconducting at much higher temperatures, around 10 degrees Fahrenheit. In the new study, Hemley and his fellow researchers explored whether changing the material's chemistry can lower the pressure needed for superconductivity. They added a small amount of whatever that is, yttrium, to the lanthanum superhydride to make it more stable and reduce the pressure required. To reach these extreme pressures, we squeezed a tiny sample between two diamonds. See, I was talking to you about, I didn't report on it extensively, but they found that time crystal, right? So they're finding different ways to manipulate light through diamonds and crystals and stuff like that. Um, Said Maduri, a physicist at the APS. Now, this is where I was talking about this is going to come into play. The team's diamond anvil device can generate pressures as high as 5 million atmospheres. Don't understand what that means in pressure, but there you go. After forming the superconducting material at high pressure and temperature, the team used high energy X rays from the APS. Remember, APS is that X-ray machine that they have in Argonne National Laboratory that can do these light visuals like X-ray scan does, 500 times greater than our current X-ray machines that we have in hospitals. From the APS to study its structure at beam lines. I don't even know how to. Yeah, their beam lines are pretty intense. We focus an intense X-ray beam onto a sample only a few micrometers thick and about 10 to 20 micrometers across. A beamline scientist and research professor at the University of Chicago said. 1 micrometer is about 1/70th the width of a human hair. There we are. We're talking about the same type of technology that we just talked about on these beyond the nano scale. This is a atomic scale, right? That we're able to do this on. It's getting very intense. Okay, this is getting ridiculous. Okay, the recent APS upgrade made these measurements possible. Its brighter, more tightly focused X ray beam allowed researchers to study extremely small samples while changing the pressure, according to a press release. That beam allowed us to separate signals coming from the tiny sample itself, as opposed to those coming from the surrounding materials and diamond anvils. The team that the team found that small differences in how atoms are arranged in a crystalline lattice can strongly affect superconductivity. See, they're manipulating it through a crystal. They identified two different crystal structures, each becoming superconducting as a slightly different temperature as per the release. These experiments show what the upgraded APS can do. We can now study atomic level structures with unprecedented detail and materials under extreme pressure. Ladies and gentlemen, these people are going into places that they should not be researching and bringing this stuff about into a reality, our reality, and we're going to start seeing things that you only see in sci-fi films. Pretty nuts. All right. So that's enough about the advancements in um, material technology coming forth. I know I haven't done anything on AI as of recently, but I've been really keeping track of this military tech stuff, specifically because when the Genesis mission came out, um, we really didn't understand what it was. So that's why I did that episode on Argonne National Laboratory, because Chris Wright, the head of the Department of Energy, is behind all of this, and they have teams working on this stuff. So I think the better part of what we're going to see is going to be coming out of our military and out of our private corporations that have defense contracts and stuff like that. That's why I'm keeping an eye on that, because that's most likely we're going to start seeing this stuff come out. And it's pretty important that we keep track of it, because there's going to be so many people that don't understand what's coming forward. And it's getting pretty intense, as you can see with the tech, the technologicals they're advancing, because they're using quantum computing in order to come up with these hypotheses in order to study this further, creating these machines that allow us to now go past the nanoscale into the atomic level on these structures. Pretty insane. All right. So I had talked to you a little bit about um, the Artemis 2 coming back, right? So this right here is an update on SpaceX's launches Falcon 9 rocket from Vandenberg Space Force Base, which I believe is in California. So the update was supposed to be for this last Monday, April 6th, but they said that it was delayed, as you saw in the opening video there, because of high pressure winds. And I believe that the update, although it's not written in this article here, was set for today at 8 p.m. off of the same base. So the reason I bring this up is what caught my eye is because um, Elon has ambitions to get more satellite constellation in our suborbital space, ladies and gentlemen. And according to what I read, the Falcon 9 rocket is supposed to be releasing like 20 more of these satellites into our suborbital space. And what's the reason for this? Because they're all Starlink, right? So he's building this constellation so that it's basically, he wants to expand the Starlink reach over the entire world. And let's say that you live on a mountain in a remote space, right? And you don't have like internet. You don't, these are places that you can't dig trenches to put in fiber optics or build telephone lines to, because it's too expensive when people don't live out there. It's just remote and only a very few people do, right? So with Starlink, you're going to be able to get this in very remote places with Starlink. That's what he's offering. And so with putting this many satellites into a constellation, basically what he wants to do is, when one satellite reaches that remote space and then starts to go beyond, the next one will come into line and take its place. So that when these satellites keep moving past each other, they're taking the place of the one that previously moved out of that space, so that you have a continued connection of internet in that remote area and all throughout the world in these third world countries. That's what he's trying to do. So I thought this was pretty interesting to notice that that's what the Falcon 9 missions are all about. They've done several of them, as you can see here, since the beginning of April, and they're all designed to do the same thing. So he's putting up more Starlink satellites up into orbit. Pretty interesting, um, to me at least. Anyways, I don't know if anybody else is interested in that, but when you think about, okay, so I'm not doing an AI update on this one, but when you think about the fact that AI is said that it could be, if it jailbreaks, right, and it becomes uh, AGI, artificial, and you think about the fact that even with our 5G going into 6G, they're talking about the control we're going to have over the Internet of Things. So everything is connected already. So the danger with that, in my opinion, is now we're going to even have a worse footstool for this AI if it does, this artificial intelligence, if it does jailbreak itself into artificial general intelligence. And if you've been paying attention, Claude, what is it, Claude 9, it has now expanded into Mythos. I heard something about this yesterday, which they're saying it's I guess they controlled it, but it was already able to break out of what they put it in. So it being able to break out of the box, right? And then take control of, let's say, Elon's Starlink satellite constellation over the whole entire world. I don't even want to imagine the possibilities of that, ladies and gentlemen. But that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about here when we mention things like Elon's Falcon 9 and him doing that and completing all of the visions that he has to go to Mars and go to the moon. But like I was telling you, uh, the whole thing about going to the moon now has taking the forefront of, what did I just do here? It's taking the forefront. Uh-oh, I lost that. Has taken the forefront of him wanting to go to Mars because of helium-3 on the moon, right? And so one of the things that interested me when I looked this up the other day was this article popped up, and it's a whole entire race to get to the moon, right? For this propulsion fuel called helium-3. But now there's other ideas of what we should do on the moon. And here is another example of that with Japan. Japan wants to build a solar ring around the moon that will provide endless clean energy to Earth. So when we think about, they want to build a moon base, right? I don't know if obviously helium-3 isn't the only material that we have on the moon that could help us with energy, but this is what this is what Japan's idea is. No cloud, no night, no fossil fuels, just endless power from a construction project that sounds too wild to be real. Look at that. So that looks like, what's that? What's that show? Stargate. That's what that actually looks like, a Stargate right there around the moon. But I guess it's just all solar panels. More than a decade ago, a Japanese construction company unveiled a plan to build a massive belt of solar panels around the moon's equator. The concept, called the Luna Ring. Anybody? Anna Paulina Luna Ring, would stretch for 6,800 miles and generate uninterrupted solar power without any of the weather or darkness problems that plague Earth-based arrays. The project received little attention at first, but after the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster in March 2011, Japan suddenly had a much sharper interest in alternative energy sources. The numbers are hard to ignore. Shimizu Corporation, the firm behind the proposal, claims that Earth based solar panels can only generate 1/20th of the energy produced by an equivalent array in space. So you talk about the green energy deal, right? Now we got these bozos wanting to put a solar ring around the moon. I don't know that. Well, I guess maybe the moon is a little closer to the sun, but I don't know that it's going to actually produce any more energy than we can actually do with solar panels here on our own surface. But I digress. I don't know. On the lunar equator, there is no atmosphere to block sunlight, no clouds, no night on the sun. Oh, so there you go. That's the reason why they're saying it, because there's nothing to block the sun rays from projecting it back to here on Earth, right? So that's the idea. Meaning the system could run continuously around the clock. Interesting. President of Shimizu's Space Consulting Group, CSP Japan, told ABC News that if all the energy from the lunar panels reached Earth, there would be no need to burn coal, oil, or biomass ever again. So they're trying to get rid of fossil fuels. That's another reason behind this whole aspect, when in fact, I think those things are going to uh, come into play long after they want them to. Although new technology, new fuel systems are coming out, like thorium, like I reported on last week, and now we're getting all of this. Now we're going to the atomic scale, so we're going to be able to create things. One of the things that I predicted with lithium is we're going to have dilithium, like we see in Star Trek, and that'll be one of the things that helps us have propulsion systems that let us go farther into space than we've ever been before, just like we see on the shows. All of this stuff is coming to reality, right? How power travels from the moon to your home. The lunar ring solves a basic problem with terrestrial solar power intermittency. On Earth, solar farms stop producing at night and lose efficiency during cloudy weather. But the moon has virtually no atmosphere, meaning nothing blocks the sun rays. Along the lunar equator, one side or the other is always bathed in sunlight, enabling the true 24-hour power generation. Here is how the energy would travel. Solar cells on the lunar equator convert sunlight into electricity, and built in cables carry the power to the near side of the moon, the face that always points towards Earth. Their transmission facilities convert the electricity into microwave beams and high energy lasers aimed at receiving stations on the ground. High energy. Could those be photonic lasers, ladies and gentlemen, that project this energy? Maybe. I think maybe even QKD could come into play as far as that goes, of sending energy to the Earth if they actually built something like this. Very interesting. On Earth, specialized antennas called rectennas capture the microwaves and convert them back into electricity for the power grid. According to Shimizu's proposal documents, the system could also use the energy to produce hydrogen fuel for storage and transportation. The goal is a complete shift away from fossil fuels and towards a hydrogen based society. Robots and moon dirt, a construction plan like no other. So we're going to start seeing these robots come out sooner or later, right? They're being mass produced right now. They're going to be being used for something. We're going to send them up in rockets to build this moon base, for one, because we're not going to compromise our own human beings to a death sentence, basically, because they have to try to operate and build a base inside uh, an astronaut suit and not have any problems with punctures or anything like that by accident and end up dead. And then we have to send more up. Yeah. So we're going to use these robots to do that kind of stuff. Building anything on the moon is extraordinarily difficult. So Shimizu plans to rely almost entirely on robots, of course. These machines would be teleoperated from Earth 24 hours a day, performing tasks like ground leveling, excavation of lunar crust, and assembly of equipment. Excavation of lunar crust. If you caught that there, they're going to be ones mining this helium-3. And assembly of equipment. A small team of astronauts would support the robots on site, but humans would play a secondary role. The construction would also use lunar resources as much as possible, reducing the need to haul materials from Earth. Moon soil, well, I mean, how are you going to build a base then? There's not steel up there, there's not glass, there's not wood. How are you going to do this? From my knowledge, there's nothing on the moon but dust, right? How are you going to make something out of nothing? We're not God. Moon soil is an oxide compound, and by importing hydrogen from Earth, workers can produce water and oxygen from the lunar surface. The same soil could be turned into concrete. Concrete? Really? Ceramics? Okay. I asked the question. Now I'm getting the answer. Ceramics, glass fibers, and even the solar cells themselves. Hmm. And you see what this belt would most likely look like if they were to do this. It's not actually going to be like floating around the planet like a Stargate would in this instance, I don't think, right? But it's going to be flat on the surface. Shimizu's proposal includes self-propelled production plants that would move along the solar equator or the lunar equator, manufacturing solar cells from local materials and installing them as they go. The solar belt would range in width from a few kilometers to 400 kilometers at its widest point, wrapping the entire circumference of the moon. That's going to take them a while. The transportation route along the equator would carry construction materials with power cables buried underneath. The cost problem that nobody has solved. For all its ambition, the lunar ring faces one overwhelming obstacle: money. Well, isn't it all about money? An economist with the Institute of Energy Economists in Japan told ABC News that lunar solar panel sounds good in theory, but costs too much. Go figure. He argued that Japan should focus on more realistic alternatives like geothermal power, which is already available and far cheaper to develop. Yoshida himself admitted that he has no concrete estimate of the project's cost. The technology required is still in the research phase, including the ability to beam gigawatts of power across 238,855 miles of space with pinpoint accuracy, right? The microwave and laser transmission would require guide beacons on Earth to ensure the beams hit their receiving stations, a feat never attempted on this scale. I think that's something probably Elon could take care of, but we got to get there first, ladies and gentlemen. Despite these hurdles, Shimizu's proposal argues that all the basic ingredients already exist. Sunlight is free, solar panels are mature technology, and both microwaves and lasers are well understood. The challenge is scaling everything to an unprecedented degree and doing it on the surface of another world, where the lunar ring stands today. As of the source documents from 2011, the lunar ring remained a conceptual dream project on Shimizu's official website. The company had not secured any funding, received no official endorsement from space agencies like JAXA or NASA, and had no active development timeline. The proposal was featured on NASA's Lunar Science Institute webpage, but generated little interest beyond that. The Fukushima disaster changed the conversation temporarily. With 54 nuclear reactors generating 30% of Japan's energy supply, and more than half of them idled after the meltdown, the Japanese public and government became more open to unusual alternatives. Yoshida noted that his plan had been quiet for a year before suddenly receiving attention after the March 2011 earthquake and tsunami. No public updates from Shimizu have moved the project beyond the proposal stage. Yoshida remains confident, telling ABC News that all the team is doing is using existing resources: sunlight, solar panels, microwaves, and lasers. If we can continue to do the research, he said, we think there's a huge chance this could become a reality. And actually, it might become more of a reality if the United States itself ends up getting to the moon and completes this moon base project that they've been talking about, right? Um, because then we're going to be there. They're talking about being there in 2028 and building this and having it operational by 2030. And I guess if we have a bunch of robots up there doing all of the work for this thing, then maybe the fact that they're up there will bring these ideas like from Japan to fruition, because then we'll have the robots up there and the resources up there to already do it, right? Is that what you would think, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, I want to open this up here real quick because I lost the articles a minute ago. All right, so that's very interesting. I think that's the end of the article there. Yeah, let's stop sharing that. And this is where it gets pretty crazy, ladies and gentlemen. So, how do I want to end this? Let's go with the Air Force next because I thought, I'm always tracking the military stuff and what's coming out next because this stuff is getting pretty crazy when we talk about this, right? So, Air Force wants nearly 1 billion to start buying CCAs in 2027 or CCAs. This is pretty interesting, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about defending America and then going into these conflicts like we are. This is one of the things that they're talking about. The Air Force is asking for nearly 1 billion in fiscal 2027 to start buying collaborative combat aircraft in earnest as a production decision on which semi-autonomous drones to buy looms. Budget documents released by the Pentagon comptroller shows a planned 996.5 million in CCA procurement for 2027 plus another 150 million in advanced procurement to support 2028. The documents do not include the number of aircraft the Air Force is looking to buy with that money. So this is pretty interesting considering, we just came out with the F-47, we have the F-35 in production, and the amount of money it costs to build these with all of this new technology in them. This is kind of a cool offshoot to having good air defense, in my opinion. As Air Force spokesman could not immediately answer a query, the service is expected to announce more details on its budget request in a few weeks. Since fiscal 2024, the service has spent almost 1.91 billion developing CCAs meant to fly as unmanned wingmen alongside manned fighter jets, ladies and gentlemen. This is the first time, however, that the Air Force has included procurement money for CCAs in its budget. So CCA is Collaborative Combat Aircraft. That's what that stands for. And it's accompanied by another 1.37 billion in research and development funding, putting the total 2027 request for the program at 2.37 billion. Before the Air Force can start buying CCAs, however, it must decide what it wants to do for increment 1 of the program. It has 2 airframes to choose from. The YFQ-42 built by General Atomics and the YFQ-44 built by Anduril. And officials have suggested that they could decide to carry both types into production. Now, Anduril, this is very interesting. This is one of these corporations militarily that's starting to get hyper involved, and you're going to see here in a minute when we talk about the advancements in the Golden Dome. They're the specific corporation that they're asking to be involved in helping build the Golden Dome. When the Air Force announced General Atomics and Anduril as finalists for Increment 1 in April 2024, it said it was planning a production decision in fiscal 2026. That decision date hasn't moved or gotten more specific. Since leaving a September 30 deadline for the service, the initial plan for Increment 1, articulated by then Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall, was more than 100 CCAs on order or delivered by 2029. So we're talking in a very near future. Kendall also said he hoped each CCA would cost about 1/3 of an F-35 fighter, or around 30 million or less. So this is very cost effective when it comes to our military budget and having the materials that we need in case of a conflict in protecting our nation, right? So that's very cool. 100 of these things fighting alongside if we got in a conflict. That would be awesome. Though the quantity and cost plans may be changing, though, on March 17th, Director of Critical Major Weapon Systems, General Dale R. White, said the service was considering increasing the speed and scale of production for Increment 1. Though no final decisions have been made, a week later, Colonel Timothy Helfrich, the portfolio acquisition executive for fighters and advanced aircraft at the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, said that the Air Force was beating Kendall's cost goal. That's awesome. So it's becoming even cheaper to build these CCAs than they had originally anticipated. Notionally, if the price per CCA drops below 25 million, the procurement funding in 2027 could cover around 40 aircraft. There are, however, initial spare parts, including a procurement funding, which can affect how unit cost is calculated. So the nice thing is, because they put a bunch of money into building these kamikaze drones, like what we've seen over in the Iran conflict, right? So now we're going to see them go this way, so that we have wingmen backup for for airmen firefighters in the sky, right? So they're going to have more than just like Scud missiles and stuff like that. They're flares to ward off incoming missiles and stuff like that. We're going to have wingmen drones that can take these things down. That's going to be pretty dang cool. The introduction of CCA funding is the single best add to the Air Force's overall aircraft procurement budget in 2027, which totals $30.64 billion. That's a modest 1.67% increase over 2026, held back by a significant drop for the B-21. As it has in years prior, the Air Force does not specify how many B-21 Raiders it is seeking to buy, but the Raiders budget spiked to $6.47 billion in 26, driven by extra money from the reconciliation package, and is projected to fall to $2.23 billion in 2027, still above previous base budgets. Several key aircraft programs are holding relatively steady in 27. The Air Force is seeking to buy 24 fourth generation F-15EX fighters compared to 2022 and 26. The 15EX, I believe, is the one that got shot down in Iran here recently. Not sure how that differs from the F-15. I'm not really into airplanes. My son could probably tell you, though. Its buy of KC-46 aerial refuelers is the same as years prior at 15 airframes, and it is buying 3 EA-37B Compass Call aircraft compared to 2 the year before. The bigger plus ups beyond CCA are for the F-35 fighter at 38 airframes compared to 24 and 26, and the T-7A trainer, which goes up from 14 to 23 jets. All told, the service is looking to produce 108 new aircraft in 27, plus whatever number of B-21s and CCAs it buys, and 6 smaller hand-launched RQ-20B drones. So a lot going on in the military, ladies and gentlemen, in creating these new aircraft for our military defense systems. Pretty cool. Now, let's go into our last article here, and part of my thumbnail there is Trump hugging the Golden Dome, because this is his baby, right? This is what he wants to be built in the United States. And I thought this was a pretty cool article, considering what I had reported to you previously about what Maria Bartiromo came out and revealed when she was interviewing Jared Isaacman, the administrator for NASA. So let's read into this. Golden Dome seeks $18 billion, pegs major test for 2028. One tiny problem: the technology doesn't even exist. Or does it, ladies and gentlemen? Donald Trump has reportedly moved forward with plans to build a Golden Dome and has finalized 2 companies to work together, smashing missiles from space. Might sound all sci-fi, but there is one major problem. Golden Dome has finalized companies, report claims. Donald Trump is believed to be aggressively moving ahead with the Golden Dome, a space-based tracking and targeting technology that will protect the United States from incoming missiles, according to Bloomberg. Satellite startup Impulse Space and defense tech company Endural have been asked to develop prototypes for the project. So Endural is going to be busy amongst, other. I heard some stuff about Planeteer today too. I want to look that up. But these are some of the companies that are getting highly involved in this stuff. The Golden Dome will be based on space-based technology. On paper, the Golden Dome will comprise a network of space-based satellites that will detect aerial attacks on America and thwart them. These satellites are the pillars of this defense system, but experts do not think this system works and have called the technology ineffective and impractical. And if you remember, ladies and gentlemen, just a couple of weeks ago, I reported on Fox Business talking about orbs in the sky that men sit in that collect data on missiles being launched. So when this news company, Wyone, which I think is out of like the UAE or something like that, this is false news because we have already reported that we do have this type of technology. Golden Dome will detect missiles from space. What the Golden Dome aims to do is use interceptors in space to find missiles as soon as they are launched, find drones, and strike them in early stages. The proposed multi-layered missile defense system works entirely on space technology, but there is a major problem. They're saying it doesn't exist. Space-based defense technology does not exist. Oh, hold up. I haven't even shared this screen with you. Let me share it with you so you can see that I'm not talking out my butt here, right? All right. As you see here, space-based defense technology does not exist. This technology, which uses satellite and interceptors in space to detect and smash missiles, does not even exist. As of April 3rd, 2026, the White House is seeking approximately $17.5 billion to $18 billion for fiscal year 27 to fund the project. This request has been met with criticism as critics question the expenses to fund a project that might not even be feasible. Oh, it is, ladies and gentlemen. It is. And we see the money coming through already for the starting and the building of our own Golden Dome. But they're saying it has no fixed timeline. Was announced in January 25, right after Trump took office. However, there is no clear timeline for its development. But the first major test has been slated for 28, according to the CNN report from August 25. This despite a Congressional Budget Office report pegging the time needed to build it to 20 years. They're saying it's going to take 20 years to build? That's insane. I would think you would have to get that done quicker. I mean, if we get somebody in office that disagrees with Trump's plan, they could just stop it verbatim, right? If we get a future president that isn't in line with the program that he wants to implement as far as building the Golden Dome. Interesting. Impulse Space and Endural will work on Golden Dome prototype. Space Force was supposed to meet a few companies based on the responses. Bloomberg has now reported that Impulse Space, led by Tom Mueller, the first person Elon Musk hired for SpaceX, and Endural will work together to develop the Golden Dome. The former would work as a subcontractor to Endural on the project. So we got somebody from Elon's SpaceX, or previously worked for SpaceX. This is going to get good, ladies and gentlemen, to see what kind of prototype they can come up with. The project has led to fears of a new arms race in space. I already reported on that. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is what's happening. And it's going to be good. It's going to be great, just like Trump says. Political think tank, the Brookings Institute, has said that the plan is a costly and destabilizing development or deployment of space-based interceptors. It has been warned that China and Russia could also do the same and make us less rather than more secure. No, I think as far as AI, China themselves are probably ahead of us. I keep hearing that, but not by far, ladies and gentlemen. And honestly, I think when it comes to the space race, um, we are actually further along than China or Russia. But you saw there that that first article concerning trapping light is actually coming out of Russia, Warsaw, right? So they are working on this different stuff, and which is which is weird. Like, because we're doing the same thing. I also reported that other article coming straight out of Argonne National Laboratory because we have that crazy X-ray machine that does 500 times brighter than anything that we have on the market today, which allows us to research this stuff on an atomic level. Interesting. Well, with all that said, it's obvious that these things are coming to fruition. And the average person probably really doesn't know about this, so I really hope that this gets out. Uh, please leave a comment on here when you watch this and let me know what you think, because some of this stuff is getting crazy. And but I really enjoy looking this up and sharing with everybody the kind of things that are coming out in our day and age as we approach this disclosure, this unveiling of robots, this unveiling of data centers and AI systems that are going to be coming online here in the very near future is really going to change our reality, ladies and gentlemen, as we traverse this earth and go forth into the beast system, because that's really what this is going to produce. And as a Christian, this is why I come on here and do this, so that we have a foundation of reality and knowledge of what's actually going to be released, because it's going to get crazy out there, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I thank you for joining me today. Please like and share beyond your wildest imaginations, because I need to grow my channel. Please help me out. Share out redlineministry.com to everybody as well. And ladies and gentlemen, it's time to draw the red line in your life, the red line in your mind with Jesus Christ our Lord. Read your Bible till it talks back to you, because the reality is the truth is straight up Jesus Christ and his word. And that is our only true foundation as we go forward. And the red line against this world system. Thank you for joining me today, ladies and gentlemen. And we'll see you next time on Redline.